Ahoy there, my children of the Watch. Welcome to Star Wars Transmissions. I'm your boy Dan. With me, the lovely, the beautiful Danny.
Hi.
We're here to break down Chapter 19 of The Mandalorian. Seems to be getting some mixed reviews, but I really enjoyed this episode. So what did you, well, actually, before we give our thoughts, let's give our friendly spoiler warning. If you have not watched chapter 19, get those booty cheeks out of here. Go watch chapter 19, then come back and listen to Danny Girl and I break down the episode. So Danielle, what was your overall thoughts on chapter 19?
I really liked it. I'm glad we got to revisit an old friend. Well, maybe not a friend, maybe an old foe. And really kind of see what he's been up to. And a little bit, I think we might have seen some information as to where this season might be heading, which is really exciting.
In the words of Kiadi Mundi, I concur. I agree with you. I really liked returning to Coruscant, which was great. I really liked seeing what Dr. Pershing's life is like on Coruscant during this time. And I think this really sets up the stage for the rest of the season, what could be coming, and potentially what we could be seeing in other Star Wars shows. You're going to hear my crazy theories because we have not had a chance to really talk about this episode, you and I, and you don't know some of the theories and thoughts I have on this episode. So I'm excited to dive into it with you.
I know. I think our extent was really, we quickly talked about it. I gave you a couple things. I had a couple of epiphanies when I started watching the episode the second time. And you just kept giving me sideways glances and sideways looks. So you're like, I have something planned.
All right, well, let's do this before we dive into some of our thoughts, some of our theories on the episode. What do you say, a recap?
Hit me.
All right, so the episode opens right where we left off in Chapter 18. Boca Tan is still in shock from seeing the mythosaur, and she asks Din if he saw the beast, to which he says no, and she quickly moves on to the next topic. The two then head to Kalevala to get Din's ship when they're attacked by several TIE interceptors, which I love that they are specifically TIE interceptors. And Din and Bo fight them off, but a whole squadron of TIEs soon arrive and destroy Castle Kryze. We then head to the Galactic Core and return to frickin' Coruscant and its Opera House, where Dr. Pen Pershing is giving a speech about being accepted into the New Republic amnesty program for former Imperials, and he provides some information about his work under the Empire. From there, we get to see Dr. Pershing's life on Coruscant under this amnesty program, and we see how he and other ex-Imperials have been given opportunities to work for the New Republic. We get to see Pershing interacting with other former Imperials, working his day-to-day job of archiving information, and his sessions with this parole officer-esque report droid that questions him. We also see Pershing befriend ex-Imperial comms officer Elia Kane, who essentially talks Pershing into once again working on the same research he undertook during his days in the Empire. The two set off for Coruscant's shipyard docks to gather the necessary equipment Pershing will need. But we come to find out this has been an elaborate trap set by Kane, and Pershing is apprehended by New Republic forces. From there, Pershing is hooked up to a mind flayer, while Elia Kane sadistically watches over him. We then return back to Bo and Din, who have traveled to the unknown planet that the Children of the Watch covert are currently living on, and both Din and Boca Tan have been redeemed in the eyes of the cult, and have been accepted back into their ranks, as the episode ends with Boca Tan staring at the mythosaur signet on display in the Armorer's Forge.
I really loved this episode.
What a dope episode. This episode was so dope, bro. This episode was baller. So I mentioned this before we get into the meat of this episode, can we just talk for a second about how great it was to be back on Coruscant?
I feel like we say this every single time.
Every
but it
time.
really is. Coruscant is beautiful. Like there is definite beauty in these buildings and lights and people and just the opulence that this entire city planet has.
I love that term opulence because I think it
opulence.
It perfectly describes the planet. And I love that we return specifically to Coruscant's Opera House, which is the same location that Palpatine told Anakin the infamous tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise in Revenge of the Sith. So I love that. And we also return to Coruscant's Monument Plaza, which appeared twice in the Clone Wars animated series, with one episode that was specifically about Mandalore, and it also appeared in Light of the Jedi. We learned that Chancellor Lina So liked to visit the peak Mount Umat. I can't remember exactly how it's pronounced. Ume, you might be right. So I love that. I love that not only is it connecting us back to the Clone Wars, but it's also connecting us to the Light of the Jedi and the High Republic. So I really, really enjoyed visiting Coruscant, being back on Coruscant. It's always a good time coming back to Coruscant. Now, let's discuss Dr. Pershing, because he dropped some revelations on us as far as the work he was doing during his time as an Imperial. And so we learned this episode that Pershing and other Imperials have been given amnesty for their crimes committed during their time working for the Empire. I'm assuming that Pershing and others that are a part of this program are giving some kind of information to the New Republic or agreeing to help the New Republic out in some sort of way in return for their amnesty. What do you think?
I think so. I really don't think they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And I know at one point in the episode, some of them did make mention of, oh, well, this wouldn't have been what the Empire is like, or the New Republic is a lot more forgiving than the Empire was. But I don't think it's they're getting something in return.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we are probably, well, maybe we might not, but I think that people that are going to be a part of this program are giving something. I think this is a give and take relationship between the New Republic and the people that are being given amnesty. I don't think the New Republic is saying out of the kindness of their heart, hey, we're going to give you amnesty just because. I think something was given to the New Republic in exchange for their amnesty.
I feel like some of it might have been this information that Dr. Pershing drops during his speech.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it could be Pershing gave information on the type of work he was doing. It could also be information about the Imperial Remnant, what they're doing, how they're operating, that sort of stuff. I think he definitely gave information in exchange for his amnesty. That's my thought. The other thing, too, that I thought of during this scene is that the amnesty program really reminded me of what we saw in the Alphabet Squadron novel. So in that trilogy, individuals that defected from the Empire to join the Rebel Alliance were granted amnesty. And another similarity that I picked up on from Alphabet Squadron is in that novel and in those series of novels, I guess you would say the main character, Irika Quell, she's like questioned by this reprogrammed ITO droid, so interrogation droid, which we see Pershing being kind of like questioned and not necessarily interrogated, but questioned by this droid in two different occasions in the episode, and I don't think that that's a coincidence.
It's just kind of like the mental health check droid. Like, are you doing and I know you mentioned parole droid, but yeah, are you doing exactly what you said you're doing? You're not having any hard feelings for the New Republic, are you?
I thought that was very interesting. It also, I mean, in terms of like real world history, that was something that America did for Nazis. So I like that too, that we're, the writers of this episode are drawing from real world history, because we know that the Empire is supposed to be an analogy, a metaphor for Nazi Germany. So I thought that was cool as well.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in this episode.
Now, some other information that we got. This to me was this was dope. I love this because, boy, I think that you can take from this sequence of information, you could take it a few different ways. So essentially during this scene where we see Pershing giving his speech in the opera house, he's explaining that, hey, I was specifically working on combining multiple strands of DNA to create replicas that incorporated the best genetic attributes of both donors. So in layman's terms, our boy was working on figuring out a way to make Force-sensitive clones, which solidifies the theory that the Empire wanted Grogu's blood to create Force-sensitive clones. Now, myself and a lot of people theorize that they were doing that for Sidious. I've mentioned this in numerous streams and videos at this point, but everything we've seen in the Bad Batch, especially in most recent episodes in the Bad Batch, as well as in the Mandalorian, has pointed to the Empire working to create Force-sensitive clones for Sidious to use as vessels for him to be able to transfer his essence into, for him to be able to live forever. Pershing's explanation of his work could validate that theory, but it also begs the question, right? The Mandalorian takes place in roughly 9 ABY, so about 4 years after the end of the Galactic Civil War, so about 5 years after Anakin threw Sidious over into the reactor shaft, right? So Sidious has been on Exegol for quite some time at this point. In that decrepit clone body, a large contingent of the Imperial Remnant has fled into the unknown regions. So we know there's still an Imperial Remnant strewn throughout the Outer Rim and the known galaxy. Could Pershing be... which we know let me rephrase it, which we know Pershing was working with Moff Gideon, right? That's what he was doing. So is Sidious still pulling the strings of the Imperial Remnant that's operating in the Outer Rim, at least to some extent, and that's why Pershing was working on creating Force sensitives?
That is a great theory, and I will say when Dr. Pershing said that it was he was combining the DNA from donors, I definitely gasped. I thought that was really exciting knowledge that we did not have before. This is new info.
I mean, it
solidifies.
It solidifies the theory that they were working on creating Force sensitive clones. Why else? You have the technology to create clones. Why else would you be pulling strands of genetic material or genetic code, so to speak, from one being, then another being, and combining that into a clone body, right? Got to be because you want you want to be able to clone a Force sensitive being, and it only hammers home that theory once you factor in Grogu and the desire for the Empire to capture Grogu and use his blood, and Pershing's experiments, at least for a short amount of time, on Grogu in season 1. Now here's the other thing.
Or Grogu.
Could the Imperial Remnant that's operating in the Outer Rim, could they be trying to create Force-sensitive clones for a different, nefarious reason?
Dan, I feel like you have a nefarious reason in mind.
Oh,
would you like to share with us?
So, bros and gals, what would be the female version of bro? Bra? Not bra. I don't know. Bros and gals. So in Legends, the Dark Jedi Joruus C'baoth was a clone who played an important role in the Thrawn campaigns against the New Republic. So the Thrawn campaigns were these basically military campaigns that Thrawn was doing. He was basically attacking the New Republic. So Joruus C'baoth was created by Palpatine, and he became the guardian of the Imperial storehouse out at Mount Tantus on Wayland, I should say, which, we've been spending some time on Mount Tantus in the Bad Batch. So in Legends, Mount Tantus acted as, again, a secret storehouse for a bunch of Sidious's dark side and Sith relics and artifacts. In addition to that, the Imperial facility was used for conducting wild-ass experiments for cloning, and that location appeared numerous times in the Thrawn trilogy, which in the Legends, the Thrawn trilogy was taking place right around the same time period that we are in currently with The Mandalorian, so right around like 8 or 9 ABY.
Dan, I feel like there's a lot of information that's just maybe referring to some upcoming projects.
Oh boy. So yeah, many people, including myself, have theorized that the overarching villain that we're going to see during this time period in The Mandalorian, which again is 9 ABY, is going to wind up being Thrawn. We hear Ahsoka tell, Morgan, what's her name? In season 2 of The Mandalorian, I forget the character's name. She asks, after Ahsoka defeats her in a duel, where's Thrawn? Where's Grand Admiral Thrawn? And so it makes a lot of sense that Thrawn would be the villain that's going to span The Mandalorian, the Ahsoka series, maybe Skeleton Crew. Especially when you consider that he was like the big villain in Legends after the fall of the Empire. So I like it. I initially, my thought was, oh my God, Pershing's telling us about how he was doing all this work. And he mentions about how, my work was corrupted to prolong basically Sidious's life. But bro, what if he was mistaken? What if the work he was doing was specifically for Thrawn or whomever to create other Force-sensitive beings that they could use to bolster their power?
Absolutely. We saw the Purgle. Was the last episode or the episode before? No, last episode.
Was it last episode? 2 episodes ago, I think.
Things flying together. But we saw the Purgle, which I feel like lends itself, and I know we mentioned at that point in time, the fact that we're seeing Mount Tantus. I'm sorry if I'm misremembering. Didn't Thrawn have something to do with TIE interceptors or the interceptor program, or was that different?
What the heck? The TIE Defenders was that was like his big project, the TIE Defenders. But to me, this is all lending credence to Thrawn is 100% going to be the villain. I think that Pershing's revelation regarding his work could 100% be planting the egg. The more I thought about it, I was like, bro, this is planting the egg for Thrawn, maybe for Jorah Sabaoth or a different clone like Dark Jedi, because technically Jorah Sabaoth was considered a Dark Jedi. That maybe it's going to be a clone Force-sensitive being that Luke and potentially other Ahsoka, maybe other characters that we are following during this time period are going to have to fight. Typically, you know me, like I dabble with legend stuff. I feel like a lot of stuff that people, some stuff with Legends I could 100% get down with. Some stuff I'm like, I think Canon is better. This is one of those things where like, bro, I actually kind of want them to kind of follow the similar outline in Legends. And to me, it doesn't even it doesn't have to be Jorah Sabaoth as a clone. It could be another character or a new clone. That's kind of a badass like idea for a story that, hey, Thrawn, or even if it's Moff Gideon, they did all these experiments. They were able to clone this Force-sensitive Dark Jedi, and then maybe Luke gets involved or Ahsoka has to fight this Dark Jedi. Like that would be kind of dope, man.
I would be totally down to see some more Ahsoka. I know we've seen a lot of Luke, but we did just see him. Let's see some more Ahsoka. I want to see some more of her life.
I mean, either one would be A-okay in my book, whether it's Ahsoka or Luke. The more I started thinking about it after I watched this episode, the more I was like, yo, I actually kind of want them to follow a similar storyline that was from Legends. And you know me, that's typically, I'm like, no, let's new stories, new characters. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, that's kind of a baller ass story.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of really awesome potential with some of these storylines or potential storylines coming up.
Even if that's not the case, if I'm wrong, regardless, I think Pershing revealing this information at least again solidifies that he was working on making Force-sensitive clones. What that purpose was 100% for, we don't know just yet, but unquestionably, his work was to create Force-sensitive clones. Now, another thing I want to talk about, I could not help but think about how the New Republic is definitely doing some shady things that are very Empire-esque and seeing some potential similarities between the Empire and the New Republic. So as we get to see let me go back a second. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So we get to see Pershing's life on Coruscant, right? We see that he's bogged down in the bureaucracy of where he's working, which is, and our homeboy is struggling to keep up. I mean, look at all those, like, I don't know what those, they're probably like data discs. I don't know the exact name for them.
Data logs.
Something like that. He's definitely struggling to keep up with the work right there. And that's definitely something we've seen other Imperials struggle with. He and the other ex-Imperials have been given an alphanumerical designation, and people don't seem to be referring to them by their actual name, which to me is very much giving off that vibe of like us versus you. You are clearly an ex-Imperial. I am not, and I'm going to use that alphanumeric designation so that I remind you that you're an ex-Imperial. Like, that to me is very shady.
Yeah, I liked it and I didn't like it. Like, I understand and I like what they were doing, but man, how dehumanizing.
Right?
Like, that's awful.
I mean, because that's the whole purpose of like the TK designation and the CT designation. It was they're not necessarily people. They're just instruments. In the clones, that's why you see hostility towards the clones, or people having anti-clone sentiments, right? Because they were viewed as nothing but just soldiers and tools for the Republic. Same thing with the stormtroopers, right? They're getting that TK designation because it doesn't matter who's underneath that armor. You're just a tool of the Empire. So yeah, that felt to me very shady, and I felt like it totally lends itself to hostilities and scrums between just galactic citizens and these ex-Imperials who, you know, not to say that what Pershing did wasn't wrong, or some of these ex-Imperials, what they did wasn't wrong, but hey, if the Empire is giving them amnesty, let's treat them like actual freaking beings, right? Not just a damn robot, right? Like, I felt bad that all of these ex-Imperials are just, they've given these alphanumeric designations, and that's how they're going to be referred to by. I
kind of wonder if that's also a way, so clearly they want to like take them away from maybe their previous life, their previous name that they used, and
could be.
I mean, it's also dehumanizing, like I said before. I don't know. Do you think it's also like a way to punish them, a way to try to, again, separate them from their previous life?
It could be. I mean, this is also something that we, you know, that hostility between ex-Imperials that defected and, you know, regular galactic citizens or people that were a part of the rebellion. There was definitely that hostility, and we saw that playing out in Alphabet Squadron. And so that's another similarity that I caught in this episode with Alphabet Squadron. So you could be right. I think it could be a way to, like, maybe for a certain period of time, you're going to go by this designation. And then if we feel like you've acclimated into New Republic life well enough, if you seem like you're an upstanding citizen, then you could use your name again. I don't know. Yeah, it's just very much like a shady thing.
I feel like it's also just, you mentioned like acclimating back to like normal life on Coruscant. This is really bad, but like, is that actually what they want? I feel like there's so much that keeps them separate. Like, and I know, like, we do this with refugees and things. We keep them separate. We keep them in separate housing. We do all these things.
Which, oh my God, I didn't even think about that. You bring up a great point, because they're literally like, there's an amnesty housing project.
Yeah. So how are they getting integrated if they're literally just being kept separate and having to do these work in a separate location? Or, I mean, granted, I understand why they always have somebody looking over their shoulder and like having check-ins like a parole officer, but these are all things that are not helping them get integrated. It's just continuing to tell them and show them how other they are from everybody else. Like, look at that scene with the people that went to Dr. Pershing's talk at the beginning. Look at the citizens of of Coruscant that were just high on their own bath farts.
Oh, bro, they literally had their bath farts in a glass, sniffing them. Like, yeah, absolutely, man. I agree with you, and it definitely gives off an us versus them kind of a vibe. Also, most horrifyingly,
Oof.
they use the damn mind flayer on him. And even you see this Mon Calamari scientist or doctor telling him, it's not that bad, it's soothing. Bro, even if it's soothing, imagine going to a doctor and then you being strapped to a tape and be like, we are forcing this procedure on you. That has got to be such a terrible feeling. And that is, to me, something that we would see the Empire do. Not something I would expect the New Republic to do.
Like electroshock therapy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Even just, I do have to say, when they kept saying mind flayer, I just kept thinking of Stranger Things.
Yeah. Yeah. We heard, I wound up looking it up. I didn't realize Cara Dune mentioned it back in season 1 in the finale. When they're like in the Nevarro bar and it looks like Moff Gideon's going to get them. She's like, if they capture me, I'm going to be mind flayed.
Oh yeah. I haven't watched that season in so long. I need to go back and watch it again. Dang. I
mean, listen, Pershing obviously did some questionable things, but dude, I felt awful for him here. Like, this is really, really, really shady.
I mean, clearly he was also being set up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Dropping breadcrumbs and Pershing just followed right along.
I loved that learning about this stuff. I love learning about how the New Republic is operating during this time. I love that we're seeing that they are struggling to come into power, to move on from the Empire and the Empire's grip on the galaxy during this time, because it's something that we've seen in, again, I'm going to talk about the Alphabet Squadron in that trilogy. That's something that we see in those books. That's something that we see in Bloodline. Which, by the way, we talked about this before when I'd asked you if you read Alphabet Squadron. That trilogy is so dang good. I cannot recommend that trilogy enough. It's spectacular.
Also, shout out, I love the covers of that trilogy.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So beautiful.
Such a great book. So, yeah, I think for me, this episode I really enjoyed it because, again, I felt like it's connecting to what we've seen in, again, Alphabet Squadron and Bloodlines. It's helped connecting those dots. It's also helping to paint a picture of what this period is like in the galaxy at this point. And as you mentioned before, right? Like you talked about those schmohawks that come up to Dr. Pershing after his speech, and they're basically saying like, New Republic, Old Republic, Empire, Gold Jacket, Green Jacket, who gives a shit to them? Like it doesn't matter to them. They're so wealthy, they're so rich that what goes on in the galaxy really does not matter to them. And it made me think of Andor, what we saw in Andor, and it also made me think of our boy Bill Burr, the character
Mayfeld.
Thank you. When he's like, bro, New Republic, Empire, Old Republic, it doesn't, or the Republic, excuse me, it makes no difference who's in control. There's always going to be people at the top stepping on people at the bottom. So I really enjoyed seeing that play out in this episode.
Oh man, I really disliked these people as soon as they walked onto our screen.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the point of them, right?
Oh, I know.
They're supposed to be schmohawks. We're supposed to be like, oh, these freaking morons.
Yep, they just don't like to get involved.
So, one last thing. Do you think Elia Kane, right, the character that we see kind of schmoozing Pershing, schmoozing up to him, when she and then we see her crank the freaking mind flayer up to 11. Do you think she's still working for Moff Gideon?
Yeah. If it's not Moff Gideon, it's somebody who is trying to get the Empire back in power again.
I agree, especially because look at her face there, right? I also, you get this when Pershing is getting dressed and ready to go on this adventure, we'll say, with Elia Kane, you hear that super ominous music That is 100% the same music that we heard when we are introduced, or I should say when we see those like defective clones that Din, Greef, Cara Dune saw last season on Nevarro in the Imperial base on Nevarro. So to me, that was basically that coupled with the scene that we got of her mind flaying frickin' Pershing was like, yeah, she's 100% a saboteur. I'm going to steal your word, a saboteur. She is absolutely still an Imperial in my mind, especially with the role that she's in. She's trying to, basically, she gets to torture people that have defected from the Empire.
So I also kind of looked at it as that, I mean, her and Pershing recognized one another. They knew that they were on the same ship before. So she knew, like, she's like, if I'm going to keep my cover, Pershing knows a lot of things.
Oh my God, that never even clicked for me.
Oh yeah, I think it was like, especially with Dr. Pershing, it was far more sinister in this round. Like, she knows she's in the good. So I don't know, maybe she does this all the time to try to get people, but maybe I feel like this might have also just been he knows too much.
Wow.
And he can figure out maybe what I'm doing, or he has, I don't know.
I just got mind flayed by that.
Heck yeah.
I did not put two and two together, but I think you're right. I think you are right. Because
he had to go.
One of them makes a comment about them working with Moff Gideon. I can't remember if Pershing mentions it initially or if she does, but yeah, that's a great point.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Pershing recognized her.
You might be right.
Oh, hey, you were on Gideon's ship. Oh, because he was surprised, because he was like staring at her. Because he was like, oh, I wasn't expecting to see somebody else from Gideon's ship.
That's right. Oh, man. Great observation, Danny girl.
I mean, we also heard some tidbits when the four of them were talking about what happened to Gideon. I think Elia Kane has some more information that she's letting us know about.
I think so too, which we'll talk a little bit more about Moff Gideon. So let's switch gears here.
This is why I want to see the screenshots ahead of time.
Let's switch gears here. Let's talk about our homegirl Boca Tan and our homeboy Din. So once Din comes to at the start of the episode, Bo asks him if he saw the mythosaur. He says no. Oh. And our homegirl just flat out doesn't say a damn thing to him, which did not surprise me in the least.
She asked him about a creature, though. She didn't specifically say mythosaur.
A living creature, she said.
Yeah,
she did not state mythosaur smartly.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
Don't be. Yeah, she 100%, this sly SOB, knew what she was doing. And no surprise, again, that she's going to leave that out. She's not going to tell Din that, right? I talked about this in a recent episode that I did, but I think she believes seeing the mythosaur is a sign she's destined to be the next leader of Mandalore and the person that's going to reunite her people. That's my thought. Is in her mind, she thinks I'm that prophesized being. Because I mentioned this when we did our stream last week. I mentioned this in my recent video. I think in her mind, I think that she knows about that prophecy that we hear the armorer tell Din in Book of Boba Fett about the mythosaur rising again to reunite the people of Mandalore. I think Bo-Katan knows that prophecy and understands the significance of seeing a mythosaur, and that's why she's not telling Din that, holy crap, I just saw a freaking mythosaur.
I mean, I think if anybody, she's going to be the one who would know, because I mean, we did see last episode how we know she was part of the royal family. They did all of these, like the stories from children's books. So clearly she knows her Mandalorian children's stories or lore or whatnot. So if anybody's going to know this information, it's definitely Bo-Katan.
I agree. I completely agree. And once Din and Bo, they travel to that unknown planet that the covert is on, we see both Din and Bo welcomed with open arms into the Children of the Watch. And not only did I get the sense that Bo was receptive and pleased to be now accepted into this cult, as we've heard her previously call them, but we see her stare at that mythosaur signet as the episode ends.
I was not expecting her to be welcomed with open arms, but I'm really glad she did, because I feel like this gives her a really great opportunity to make those connections with other Mandalorians, to maybe start planting the seed that she's the rightful ruler or unifier of Mandalore.
I'm so torn on this, because part of me is like, of course. And I agree with you. I completely did not. This like came out of left field for me. I didn't see her joining Children of the Watch. That completely caught me off guard. I think this spells problems for Din. Like, I'm torn. On one hand, I'm like, dude, we could very, very much could see Din and Boca Tan becoming adversaries. But there's also the possibility that maybe these two become allies and they work together to help unify the Mandalorians and their people. Because that would be dope. I would prefer the latter over the former. I would rather Boca Tan be a partner to Din, an ally to Din in unifying Mandalore, especially when you think about the history of Mandalore. Mandalore is rife with the history of the planet and its people, rife with infighting and rife with the people being fractured. So I think it'd be dope if you have two Mandalorians and potentially Grogu coming together to help reunite the Mandalorian people, to help rebuild Mandalore, as opposed to just one person. But I don't know. I could see it going either way. Part of me is like, I'm almost more inclined to think that we're going to see Bo-Katan be an adversary to Din.
I think you might be right, as much as I don't want to admit that. I feel like her ego is too big.
I agree.
And I know obviously she's come a long way from being a terrorist. We'll at least give her that. But I still think she definitely has a big ego. Like, she was literally just moping in her giant castle by herself for how long?
To me, I think in Bo-Katan's mind, she's thinking, hey, I've mastered the Darksaber. I come from a royal bloodline, like you said before. I saw a mythosaur. I'm meant to lead my people, not Din. She may right now, Din, she knows Din has the Darksaber, and she said to Din in episode 1, wave that thing around and everyone's going to follow you. I wonder if, in her mind, she's thinking, I don't need the Darksaber. I've got a bigger ace up my sleeve in the frickin' mythosaur that Din has no clue about. That, hey, maybe if I go and tame this mythosaur, if I ride this mythosaur, I can get the remaining Mandalorians to follow me. I don't need the Darksaber. Or maybe she thinks, hey, I need a combination of both of them, or maybe I still need the Darksaber. I don't know what it is, but I do think, to me, in Bo-Katan's mind, like you said, I think she has an ego. I think when we heard her speaking about her royal bloodline, when you factor in a lot of those into the equation, I think in her mind, she thinks that she's supposed to be the one that's going to lead Mandalore, not Din.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of exciting things coming up in this season.
Bro, seriously.
I'm so excited.
All right, let me ask you another question. Do you think that there's a chance maybe Grogu could be the one to tame the mythosaur?
I would love that. I mean, we've mentioned it before, and I mentioned it. Like, I would love if we just had a total 90-degree turn, and the Mandalorian is not Din or Bo, it's Grogu. I think that would be super clever, and I would love it.
I would absolutely love that. I would love that.
We've already seen his connections that he has with animals, the Rancor.
We saw him take down a Rancor and put it to sleep, basically.
The Mudhorn. Like, we saw him how he saw the Purgles, whether that was some kind of connection or not, we don't know. But he saw, I don't know. I feel like he definitely has a little bit he has a connection with some of the animals. That would be, that would be cool.
To me, I wouldn't lose my mind if we found out come the series finale that the Mandalorian, it was not Grogu, it was Din all along. I would jump for joy if it winds up being, we find out this story is supposed to be about Grogu. That's who the Mandalorian is, and Grogu is the one that tames the mythosaur. Like, that would be so sick. That would be so freaking dope, especially because when you think about the lore of Mandalorians, they're very much like about their lore and their history, right? And I say this because think about Tar Vizsla. Tar Vizsla was the first ever Mandalorian Jedi. He was the Mandalorian that created the Darksaber. There, as far as I'm aware, there has not been another Mandalorian Jedi.
I don't think so.
Right? So Grogu being a Force sensitive, he's now 100% a Mandalorian. Maybe not in the eyes of the children in the same way that the children of the Watch view Mandalorians, but he's a part of Din's clan Mudhorn.
He hasn't been baptized yet, so he doesn't have to wear his helmet.
Yep. So I think it'd be so dope. And yeah, when I was thinking about this, I'm like, bro, how sick would it be to see it's Grogu that freaking tames the mythosaur?
Or like I could see a scene where like maybe Din, Bo, and Grogu all go back and maybe or to Mandalore, or maybe Grogu finds himself with Bo, or like he stashes away on her ship or something when she goes to Mandalore to go trying to tame the mythosaur, and then she's like surprised or something. Like, ooh, look it. I can't do this. I'm having such a hard time. And then Grogu swoops in and is just like,
that would be sick.
No.
All right. So last thing I want to discuss.
Alrighty.
How are we on time? We got about 15 minutes, so we're good on time. All right.
Yeah. About 20 minutes.
So
try to keep it to an hour there, folks. We'll see.
The last thing I want to discuss is the Imperial Remnant that attacks Din and Bo. First off, let me just start by saying, bro, that fight sequence was sick.
Oh, so much fun.
It was so sick. And I'm not the biggest, like, space battles aren't usually my jam. They're cool, but they're not like, I'm not going to go back and watch Rogue One specifically for the space battle. Like, I'm going to go back and watch Rogue One for the Darth Vader scenes. That's the stuff I usually love. But man, this scene was so sick. And like when Boca Tan does that like drift move where she does the 180 cool. And we were watching it again as we were eating dinner before we started streaming, the patented Din move where he likes to turn off his engine and just nosedive at his opponent.
Free fall.
That was so sick. Oh no, because Bo-Katan, when she did that drift move, she also free fell.
Yeah, and
R5, yeah. Oh, that was this was just a spectacular scene. And another, at no point in this season have I thought to myself, man, the effects look like crap, or that looks clearly fake. The effects this season have been spectacular, and I thought they were really great, especially during this fight sequence, this dog fight sequence.
I agree, and I know like this scene or this episode was really definitely heavy with the special effects. Thinking how much of Coruscant was just computer generated. And yeah, these scenes with all the flying and everything, I thought everything has looked really awesome.
It looked spectacular, and just even like one of the things I really enjoyed was seeing Bo-Katan just flying through the cliffs of Kalevala. Like it just looked so dope. So I really liked it. Now, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment like, oh yeah, she's driven through those, she's flown through those cliffs before many, many years ago.
Yeah. Okay, let me backtrack on photos here.
You got it.
When I was putting together my notes, I thought that Grogu sensed in the Force something bad was about to happen because we hear him like squeak right before the first group of TIEs arrive as Din, Grogu, and Bo-Katan are flying to Kalevala. You had a different thought.
I sure did. We heavily, it was my term, heavily disagreed on this one. Bo and Din were talking, and Bo made a comment, and Din goes, "This is the way." Bo replies with, "This is the way." And then Grogu did a little gurgling, babbling that was a little longer than normal. And my thought was that he was trying to mimic them.
I love that.
He was also trying to say, "This is the way." I feel like last episode, he almost like with him looking at Bo, and I felt like he was trying to get into the conversation a little bit more. And I love how in this scene right before the TIE interceptors showed up, we had, so Grogu does his little babble. Din kind of like slowly turns around and looks at him. And then he turns around in front and Bo and him look together. So that was kind of my thought, was that they're like, did he just try to say this is the way? Is he trying to get in on this action over here?
After watching it for the second time, I agree with you. First time through, I was like, oh, he's sensing in through the Force that the TIEs are arriving. Second time through, I'm like, okay, Danielle was 100% right. I was wrong. You were right. I'm not that good looking. You're very attractive. Yes. You were correct.
I'll disagree with that last part because, like, yeah, you are kind of attractive, but whatever. But thank you. I do enjoy hearing I'm right, as most women do. But anyway, I think I am hoping that he's going to start maybe saying a couple words towards the end of the season. He's learning. I feel like right now, especially after training with Luke, every single episode, he has been, like last time he was showing us more flips. He's just, you can see how much growth he's had since last season. And I think it's really exciting.
I think you're 100% right that we've seen him kind of like try to speak. And I mentioned this, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, that he's a sponge right now. He's soaking up so much information that I agree with you. I think by season's end, we're going to hear him speak. Maybe not by season's end, because man, that is a tall, my Long Island accent almost came out for a second.
You think it didn't?
That's a tall order for Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, and everyone involved with this series of getting that voice right.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe it'll just be a couple words. I'm okay with that. But like, okay, let's see. I mean, his flipping, he can use the Force now without needing a nap. He is navigating, like Din showed him how to navigate. He found his way back to Bo. He is growing in leaps and bounds right now. And I think by the end of the season, he might have some more fun things up his cute little brown sleeve.
I concur. Now, let's go back. So, sadly, the bombing of Castle Kryze definitely reminded me of the bombing of Sundari during the Night of a Thousand Tears, when we see the armorer tell Din what happened during the Great Mandalorian Purge, or the Great Purge of Mandalore, I should say. That totally reminded me of that attack on Mandalore. And then the last thing, all of those TIEs that we see attacking in the second wave, they are definitely not from a warlord. And Boca Tan, when we were watching it, I was like, I got to rewind this. Didn't one of them make a comment about these Imperials attacking as sort of like retribution because of Boca Tan doing something? And we both were not sure. And then you go back and watch it and you hear Boca Tan say, I scruffed up something. I did something to a warlord, and this is they're basically attacking me as retaliation. And then when the second wave of TIEs arrive, Bo-Katan says, hey, this is too many TIEs for a warlord. Makes a lot of sense. Seems like a squadron operating under a Moff, or someone like our homeboy Grand Admiral Thrawn, which ties back into what we discussed earlier, right? We did hear that ex-Imperial say Moff Gideon might have escaped en route to his war tribunal. So those TIE pilots could be taking orders from Gideon and or Thrawn. And in that scene, where this scene specifically right here, where this ex-Imperial is talking about Gideon, he said the rumor is. And then the other Imperial next to him makes a comment about, oh, well, I heard it was this. So it's not entirely clear what happened to Moff Gideon. We don't know. But I think this is planting the seed that, hey, Moff Gideon could come back again. We don't know what's happened. There's some doubt as far as, did he actually make it to that war tribunal? So I think this episode is 100% setting up things for the future of this season, and I think beyond.
Absolutely. I think, didn't the second ex-Imperial officer also say he was mind flayed.
Oh, that's right. That's what he said.
I'm wondering if, okay, maybe I'm going to say the Moff Gideon escaped, and maybe they're just saying that he was mind flayed to just throw people off their scent.
Oh, I like that.
Be like, you know what? Although if he turns up, man, they're in some deep
hoodoo. Jinx, bro. Yeah, I like that idea. And I mentioned this, or maybe you mentioned. I think we discussed this in one of our live streams. I think for the first in the season premiere that hey, you could very easily bring Moff Gideon back into. That's right, because you had told me that Giancarlo Esposito was at the premiere, and I mentioned, hey, I would love if I think it'd be cool to have Moff Gideon around because Giancarlo Esposito is a spectacular actor and he's a phenomenal villain. But I have to say, dude, I feel like Lucasfilm and Disney, every time I'm like, I don't want stories that take place during the Galactic Civil War. I want them to talk about new characters and new stories. Then we get Andor. I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. I'd said like, I kind of want this season 3 of The Mandalorian to not focus on the Empire. Let's focus on the Mandalorians. And now we get a little taste of the Empire in this episode. I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, bro, let's Empire, let's see what's going on with the Imperial Remnant. Like, I feel like Lucasfilm has done a very good job. When I say I don't want to see something, they exceed my expectations, which has been dope.
I also think though, like this is a slightly different twist
than absolutely.
Really what we've seen before. Like it's kind of, it was really sad to see what Dr. Pershing's life has turned into and what, I'm assuming what ends up happening after he gets mind flayed. But I think it's been really interesting to kind of see them navigating what the New Republic is right now and what they're kind of required to do and living as an ex-Imperial in this weird new world.
Yeah, I agree. And just one other comment that I don't think I mentioned before that I mentioned how I like that this episode connects to what we've seen in Alphabet Squadron and Bloodline. I also like that it helps provide some context and some understanding of, oh yeah, that's how, at least in part, how the New Republic allowed the First Order to come to power, because we may start to find out that, and we get a little bit of this in Bloodline, like how there was, in Bloodline, you start to learn that Princess Leia and others were kind of figuring out that the First Order was around, and that there were people within the New Republic Senate basically working with the First Order. And so I like that we're getting things tying back to other stories. And I like that it helps add some context to what we saw in the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, absolutely. Just as a quick side note before you flip to the next screenshot, those little jars, I'm assuming they're alcohol, reminded me of buzz balls. And I don't know
what those are.
I've had them once, and it was when we were on one of our long camping trips. I think we found them in a liquor store outside it was in North Dakota. I think we were in Teddy Roosevelt National Park. And it was like literally like that jar size, and it's like 15% alcohol in like this freaking tiny can. Or like
Jeez.
tiny
girl
little
getting
container.
Herky jerky in Teddy Roosevelt.
Apparently. But that's what they reminded me of. These just little tiny pint-sized, actually half pint-sized alcohol drinks.
That'd be great if if they did like a quick little shot of these ex-Imperials all hammered on whatever they're drinking. Yo, Bullrun, welcome to the chat, my man. Glad you're joining us. Sadly, we're almost wrapping up. Now, one last thing I want to talk about. I liked seeing our boy Pershing getting the information on Coruscant through that data pad, because it totally reminded me of a scene that we got in Dune when Paul Atreides is getting information on the planet Arrakis from a similar type of data pad-esque device. I thought that was dope. I really enjoyed that.
Lucas stealing more ideas from Dune. But yeah, no, I thought that was fun. Poor. I honestly, I feel really bad for Dr. Pershing.
I do too, man. Like the more we talked about this, the more it bummed me out that our boy got the shaft, man. And I hope we get to see like what's gonna come of him after this episode. Like I really hope that this isn't like, hey, this is the last we see of Dr. Pershing after this episode. I hope we get to see what comes from him next, because I feel really bad for Dr. Pershing. And again, I know I don't want to say, absolve him of his crimes and what he did, but it's a bummer to see him get mind flayed, man. Like that sucked.
And what is really sad to me is that I don't think he got into the Empire, at least and based on his story. I don't think he got into the Empire to as a vindictive, mean thing. I really do think that he was just like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a scientist, I want to help people, and I'm going to do research on something good. And this ended up being the path that he took. Whether that's right or wrong, obviously, I mean, you can make an argument that probably very wrong, and he probably did some very bad things. But I still feel like you still got to feel for the guy.
Well, I mean, again, and I you've heard me talk about this. Like, I love when we see stories that show us characters that kind of wade in that like gray area, that not everything is always cut and dry, black and white, because there are going to be characters with good intentions that do bad things. There's going to be characters with bad intentions that might do good things, right? And I like when stories show us characters that wade in those like gray waters, and it's not always just cut and dry, black and white, good guy, bad guy. And I feel like Pershing is a guy that I agree with you 100%. And we hear him get that story about why he wanted to do the type of work he did, because his mother and her dying, and wanting to be able to save people in a similar sort of situation. So I really like that. And I definitely feel, I definitely hope that this is not the last that we see of Dr. Pershing. I hope we get to see more of him. And it would be cool if we get to see him maybe play a role in the fight in against the Imperial Remnant. That'd be dope.
I was going to say, have him get redeemed a little bit.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Like, I keep bringing up in the stream Alphabet Squadron. I love seeing that with the characters in Alphabet Squadron. So I think that'd be really cool to see Pershing get to help the New Republic fight the Empire. I hope that's something that we get to see. So this was an excellent episode. I saw people theorizing, because the episode was an hour long, that, we're going to maybe get some flashbacks with Boca Tan. And I was like, that'd be great. And now I'm so glad that we got the 30, 40 minutes time, however long we spent with Dr. Pershing and on Coruscant. I thought that was so dope. It was so unexpected. And I really enjoyed this episode a lot.
I agree. This is not where I was expecting to spend the majority of the episode. But man, I really enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me a little bit of episode 3 of The Last of Us with Bill and Frank.
Oh yeah. I mean, just totally unexpected and welcomed. Yeah. Got a hot minute left. The Bad Batch, you haven't watched it yet, right?
I have not.
Man,
sorry.
It was a total snooze fest for me, I have to say. Wasn't the best Bad Batch episode, but that's all right. We got we've got a bunch of excellent episodes this season. One episode that wasn't my favorite isn't gonna spoil the season for me, but I didn't think the episode was anything special.
I'm gonna watch it after we're done here. It's definitely gonna be watched tonight. Don't you worry.
Yeah, I'll get your opinion then.
Okay.
But Mando is continuing to be a great show. And this episode was a ton of fun. Any final thoughts?
I'm totally digging season 3 so far. Super stoked on Mando. I'm so excited to see where this season goes, because like we mentioned last time, I feel like where we were expecting the season to go, getting to the Living Waters, it's done. It's over with. And now we have Din and Bo both in the covert. Let's see where we go from here. I'm so excited.
And now the Empire back into the mix. Like, yeah, there's a lot of potential for the season. Very excited to see where this could go. But what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Did you like it? I can't say I'm surprised. I put up a poll and some people loved it. Some people thought it was meh. Handful of people didn't like it at all. I thought more people would like it, but
honestly, as soon as I saw that we were only spending like the first 8 to 10 minutes with Din, and then we've got a whole nother side story before we went back, I was like, people are gonna hate this.
Which is a bummer.
It's okay. People are gonna like what they're gonna like.
That's true.
I know we keep an open mind.
That's true. But yeah, let us know your thoughts down in the comments, whether you like this episode. Do you think I could be pulling things out of my booty cheeks? Could we see Thrawn cloning a dark Jedi? Was Pershing making clones for Sidious, or was he making clones for Thrawn and looking to create a dark Jedi? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not, now's a good time to like this video, subscribe, you jabronis, help the channel. Always appreciate the love and support you guys give us. Follow the channel on TikTok. If you have TikTok, follow us at SW Transmissions. That's it. I got to go make my dang lunch for work tomorrow.
Boo.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But with that said, my friends, may the Force be with you and stay nerdy.